welcome everybody. I'm glad to welcome you to HealthEngine Connect's next series in our webinar program. Last time we were talking about mental health and how particularly the pandemic has actually impacted some of our staff and how to look after our people. And this time around we're talking about time management for better business. My name's Marcus Tan. I'm the CEO, founder and medical director for HealthEngine, and I really wanted to welcome everybody who we've got on the line, and we've got people all over the country. But also I'd like to welcome Natalie and Sasha from Connect Psych, who are our experts today on time management, and particularly as it relates to its connection to stress and mental health. And that's what we'll talk about. So what we'll do is we'll probably just go through a quick overview of what we're going to cover. We're going to, as I mentioned, talk about how time management can actually impact mental health. We'll look at some of the sort of primary fundamentals and foundations of what time management kind of looks like and how we can do it better, and actually provide some solutions to allow us to be able to manage our time better and actually build on the habits of doing that well. And at the end, what we'll do is we'll also open it up to chat and questions. There is a Q&A function at the end, sort of at the bottom of the Zoom. And if you've got any questions at all, just pop it in and I'll monitor it. And I'll hopefully keep it very conversational as we go along. And if there's anything that's relevant at the time that we're talking about it, I'll ask the question to save everybody from having to mute and unmute. And certainly there'll be plenty of opportunities at the end, hopefully, to actually ask any outstanding questions that we haven't covered. So Nat and Sasha, welcome. And hopefully, as we mentioned, Melbourne's going to come out of full lockdown or restrictions tomorrow. And our time management is going to be improved because we've got more freedom to do stuff. Yes. Maybe let's start by talking a little bit about where you guys see the link between time management and how it impacts our mental health.
Yeah, it is. Thanks, Marcus. It's look, it's an interesting concept, and we've been talking a lot about it recently. And given the sort of changing and fluctuating nature of last year and continuing into this year, it's altered a lot of our ways of doing things. And look, I guess it's important to come back to the beginning and just sort of when we talk about time management, what by definition we're referring to it as. And time management, I think, is obviously about someone being able to do things not only efficiently but also effectively. It's about accomplishing goals daily, weekly, fortnightly, whatever that looks like for you. And it's not just, I think it's really important to mention here, and Nat and I have spoken about this too, that it's not just about getting things done per se. It's about creating and carving out what that does is carve out time for you to do the things that matter most, or in the Marie Kondo world, make your heart sing or bring joy or whatever she says. And that's where, as we move through today, we will link that links into mental health. Obviously, if you've created more time and carved out more time to do things for the things that matter to you most, it's going to ultimately increase your sense of self-worth. You're feeling happy, all those sorts of things. So I think it's really important to sense, I'm not even looking at the slides. I'm just going off on my own tangent. But yeah, it increases your sense of achievement, adding value to not only to work, and that's also something we really want to support you guys with, these skills. We want to give you some tangible things so that you can use at work, but also at home, that provides you that sense of purpose. Obviously, I don't want to go too much into what ineffective time management looks like, because I'm sure if we're all honest with ourselves, we can tick a few of those boxes, and we know, but we do. There's a tendency to judge, become more critical of ourselves and others. And that's when we start getting those unhelpful, I like to call them unhelpful thoughts instead of negative
and
thoughts.
Fixed mindsets.
Yeah. I can't, I won't, I don't, instead of, those more fluid and malleable mindsets. And that's where the connection comes in, Marcus, as you're talking about with mental health is, it can lead to sleep issues, increased anxiety, stress, tension, depression, And then obviously the connection with burnout as well.
And I think also just to add on to that, relationships, like, you know, the work relationship is so important, especially when we're looking forward to going to 2021. We really need that high team cohesion. And that's certainly with practices and practice management, you know, to get that successful practice and offices running, you know, the relationships need to be strong. So, yeah,
absolutely.
One of the big ones.
And they do. And it all, you know, sort of not contaminates, but I say cross-pollinates, but there are those relationships and that ability to have that cohesion. This carries on and cascades out to your home life as well. So it is all interconnected. So, I mean, it's a good time to talk about too the difference between stress, and then we'll talk about burnout. Obviously, major cause of poor time management is a major cause stress is a major cause of poor time management. You notice it with things like being irritable, perhaps mood swings. Again, this is all based on what your norm is, what your, you know, sort of status quo, or what your, again, everyone's different. You know, we can tend to feel a little bit more tired or fatigued, having difficulty focusing or concentrating. You know, like when you're listening to someone or someone's saying something to you and, sorry, what was that? What was that? Like you're not really present is another way, and word I use quite frequently. You can become quite withdrawn and depressed and not interested in things and that you used to be interested in. It can cause a lot of stress, lack of sleep, procrastination, lack of focus. It can also upset your work-life balance. And as Nat said before, put a strain on those workplace relationships, which, as we know, has a cascading and knock-on effect. So, yeah.
I think it's also like just a reciprocal relationship here that poor time management can create stress. But then, you know, when we see some of the employees that we work with on the platform and they are showing these stressful symptoms, if we actually then look at the way that they manage their time, is actually quite amazing. That once we can unpack that and provide them some of these, you know, just some understanding and some awarenesses, or the 3 A's, like we usually call it, and our staff usually call it, that they have these mastering techniques, and they're then able to accomplish that, and those other symptoms of stress do reduce.
And it's been really interesting. I mean, we learn as we've been preparing for this, and also that it is such a significant connection to how, you know, your own mental health. You know, we all sort of think time management on, you know, Stephen Covey, and let's get all these tools and this, that, the other. But ultimately, we need to delve, and that's what we want to be able to share with you today, a little bit more about delving into your own personality and focusing on our interests and passions outside of work, and how that has an impact on our mood. It also
well let me just jump into that, guys. So I mean, I think, you know, that's I think it's fairly clear that what you're telling us is that in some ways it's a bit of a vicious cycle. If you don't manage your time well, you can create stress, and if you're stressed, it also, you know, you can end up in this cycle of not being able to manage your time very well, and, you know, things become more chaotic and so on. You know, you don't pay any attention, or you're starting to lose concentration, or any of these sorts of things will now start to impact not just your work life, but all sorts of aspects of your life personally as well. So I think, you know, for a lot of the people that are on the call who obviously are either clinicians or running practices themselves, or, you know, in the business of making sure that you know, that their team are working well. You mentioned a little bit about the 3 A's, so maybe we can go into that a little bit. So, you know, obviously time management has certain fundamentals and first principles, or a foundation of how to think about time management. And maybe before we go into very specific tools, like being able to talk about the 3 A's that you just mentioned would be a good place to start. So would you like to talk about that?
Yeah. And I think that's probably where, Marcus, everyone gets a bit, you know, that there's a dictionary on time management out there, which is the irony man who has the time to actually read that. But it's what's really fascinating is it doesn't really take, you know, or it presumes that there is an underlying skill set that the person actually has or possesses in the first place. And more often than not, it doesn't. It's like the analogy that we use is that, you know, you can buy the best pair of Nikes out on the market, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you can then turn around and run a marathon. You actually need to understand, you know, and really have that that skill set first, because that's when a lot of people become disheartened, or their self-efficacy starts to take a little bit of a knock. So we really want to have a look at the foundations of what's underlying these. And these are 3 equally weighted sections: awareness, arrangement, and adaptation, that we need to really focus on and be able to really achieve majority of, you know, the little tips and tricks that we're talking about today, to get a great grasp before we then look into those techniques. So let's get into it now. So the first one we're going to look at is the awareness, which is understanding that our time is limited, and being aware of actually about where it goes, and really setting expectations to be able to manage it best. And then looking into the arrangement, which is really probably the area where the majority of people know best, and then think that's where the skill set, let's prioritize, let's create those short, medium, long-term goals. But, you know, coming back from a psychology perspective, that's probably where the most important aspect is, to incorporate our self-care into that area. So then we're being able to show the resilience in the adaptation stage for when those critical support incidences and those, you know, that we need to get out there right now, and those high pressure tasks and projects need to be implemented, and being able to have that resiliency and that confidence to be able to do it. Yep. So Freddie, have you got the next slide to tick on? Awesome. Okay. So we've got the awareness here, and these are, again, they're quite, when you break them all down, like they are achievable. And we're trying not to create anything that's intimidating, because a lot of people, when they think time management, they can become a little bit more overwhelmed, but this is not the whole point of this webinar as well. You know, mindfulness and journaling, it's great to actually know, where do we start? Okay, where do we, you know, what are our thoughts and our cognitions and our behaviors, and being able just to log, even, you know, like say, you know, a week, even a month, even a quarter, to start getting some, I suppose, some patterns on how we think, how we behave, how we act. It's really going to be able to help us out with it, you know, that certain amount of time, of you know, running our time and seeing where our energy lies, and what we can then do around it. So we really do need to become aware, rather than and you know, taking away from being so automatic all the time. So that's when that journaling can really help. You know, finding the peak performance, even slotting your days up into 4 different times, and finding out where you actually are most energetic, or where you find that your concentration lies the most, and then doing the highest performance tasks within those times. You know, it's very different. Sash and I are complete chalk and cheese in this instance, and that's okay, because, you know, we align what we need to do with our personality style and also our energy levels, and that's what you personally need to hone in on and find out where that is. You know, from a personal level, we always want to treat our time like it's money, because time is money, isn't it?
This one.
Yeah. So like it's, you know, if we can create a budget, like basically a time budget that splits up, you know, how we spend our day, and even putting a dollar figure. A lot of companies also then like that, to know that each hour is going towards a completion date, and it's nothing's really wasted in that way too. Realistically, you know, assessing the time we use is something that's really important, you know, like especially if you have a project, you want to realistically evaluate how long it takes you, and how long you think it's going to take. And even at the end of that, you know, reflect on, you know, what could have been done better. Where could time have been saved? Maybe where we could have delegated that a little bit more, or now that we've developed that task or understood that skill set, that can be used, you know, in another aspect of a future task, which comes through that time impact of today versus the future. We know many professional students, should we say, that love going to every single webinar and every single course they possibly can. And it's like, you want to question, well, how is that going to actually apply to your everyday life skill, and also your work? Are you using it? And we really want to be able to create what we use, and that also then helps with some neural connections and pathways, you know, to be able to remember and create habits and formations, which we'll talk about later. We also want to evaluate the importance of the task. So, if we think we'll be spending too much time on an activity, like we want to take a step back and realize, is that actually important right here, right now? Or can we delete it altogether, or can we delegate it to someone else?
You're really good at that.
And I think it's just, I think we're all busy. Let's all face it, we're all busy.
She always picks me up though. We don't need to do that now. We've got something else to do in an hour. We'll do that now. We'll do this tomorrow. So you've already got
busy
that
moms.
Yeah.
But it's amazing, because then that gives you that sense of achievement as well, and you walk away from the day to go, I think I've done the best I can today, and that sets you up for really good positive outlook for the next day. Sorry, Freddie, about that. Then we look at arrangement, and as we say, yes, we all know those developing the arrangement task, or even reducing the underestimated errors by bringing that collaboration in, and by talking to other people to say, hey, we've got this project that's coming, or we've got this idea that we want to formulate. How long should we be putting aside for this? If this is going to be your section, how long do we need? So we can develop a great and more realistic timeline by using that. But I think with the arrangement skills as well, it's also just incorporating yourself. This is really important, and this is probably where the wellbeing aspect does fall down. We are givers. A lot of people are givers. Sorry, I shouldn't say we all are givers. I was probably talking about us there as well, as busy mums and running the three companies. Health, so it's really important that you're able just to create some of those arrangement and categorizing, into the highest priority, then the medium priority, and then the lowest priority. We have things, flying around everywhere as practice managers does, and it's really nice to even start the day off even with a cup of coffee and with the rest of the team to go, right, what is going to be our priority this week, or what's going to be our priority today, what's going to be the medium, and what can be the low. So at least we're getting it in order, and that takes out the whole stress of and again, being able to have enough time if something does go over.
Because I'm sure in these guys, the majority of who we're speaking to, which we can't see names or faces, but we feel like you're there with us, that you would understand that concept, that obviously your days get thrown with time restraints and appointments and people coming into the desk. And so that would be a really useful tool, I would imagine, even if you can find just a small sort of window at the beginning of the day, just to come, get that sort of, get your mindset and frame it up for the day, because it is going to go out the window, I'd imagine, in a lot of your cases.
And that goes for goals as well. I think everyone gets so fixated on when I write down a goal, they can't change. And then if I do change it, how does that make me feel? Well, it's okay to have a goal, because if you have a goal and you're able to then achieve that, then that's going to give you that confidence and that energy and that motivation to be able to go into the second area of the goal. So that's okay. And I think you've got to give yourself permission sometimes that is something that is part of life, and things change, and to roll with that too.
Fluid,
absolutely. And avoiding the mere urgency effect. We have, and we'll talk about the 4 quadrants of the Eisenhower matrix in a moment, but we really do, within time management, want to focus on the urgent and the important. But as with Stephen Covey, the good old Stephen Covey, with his 7 habits of highly effective people, one area that we did focus on was, it doesn't have to be urgent, but it's certainly important, and that's you. So that's something that we'll get into in a moment. But using a calendar phone app is great, and we really want to be doing that. But what studies have shown is that for better memory formation, putting it in a calendar app and using your nice color codes to differentiate work, friends, colleagues, playtime, family time, school time, which we do as well, as we even glue it to the table. We've got our monthly calendar that's spread between the 2 of our desks.
A bit more like paper diary, a bit archaic like that, but it works for us.
Oh, that's not something we want to hear. we're in the digital space, guys.
We are in the digital space.
We're still holding on to our roots, Marcus.
It's a funny thing, because what I think is really important, and yes, I get it, and we get it definitely, but when we've got projects that might come up that require a little bit more of writing, you know, like it's really good for us it prompts you to know exactly what, you know, customers want and when they want it. But it's also for us when we're doing webinars or when we've got a lot on, to be able to swing to the side and look at the month that is. So that works for us. It works for us, but it's shown memory formation. Yeah.
And I think that's the point, isn't it? You've got to do whatever works for you.
Correct. And that protected time, scheduling that protected time in, that needs to be, you know, if it's not an extenuating circumstance, that needs to be something that's quite solid in everyday play is a really important factor to optimal wellbeing, and optimal wellbeing is linked to productivity. Fabulous. And then we move into the adaptation. So we really want those two equal skill sets of awareness and also arrangement to focus into those times where we've got more those crisis or those high performing, you know, or high pressure situations that can cause that anxiety or that stress level, or can create that lack of confidence there. And that's where we can really start to work in creating better adaptation skill sets by even looking at short bursts of effort. So especially it's a great way to start tasks and by breaking down the tasks and even starting to understand how we utilize the time by going in 20-minute intervals and really hyper attention that task for 25 minutes and then taking a break. We'll talk about the Pomodoro technique in a moment. Again, as I mentioned before, even, you know, detailing meeting and task reminders, and again, that's just so important, because when we start to rely upon our memory, and especially whether or not that has moved from short-term into long-term memory, more often than not, a lot of phone calls can stay within the short-term memory, don't go into the long-term memory, and some of those details can be lost, and we don't want to be able to have that anxiety when we have to perform and we don't know exactly what we're supposed to do, or we miss some little pertinent you know, details there. You know, creation of contingency plans. Not everything goes the way it goes. You know, like people can get sick, and dare I say, technology can fail. What do we do? So, what can we do in those situations? We want to be able to show the resilience that we can still perform that task, and also, when we're under less stress, then we're able to find a solution to that problem far easier than when we feel like we're under the pump there. And seeking to reduce time wasters, it's not so much thinking, all of the social media side of it. That's not what we mean about those time wasters, but more about, sitting back and saying, okay, well, this is a project that's presented. We've just been told about it. Why don't we just stop? Why don't we just take some of this time out now, go grab a coffee and just start doing some high level brainstorming. So it's fresh in our mind. We can, even if it's a month away, we've kind of got that set down and we can put that away. And then when we do come back to it, because it's not a high priority right now, it might be a lower priority as in the, the current time. We feel like we're going to come back to it with a lot more confidence than if we had to then strain the brain to go, what was said again. So that's something it can still be. Pen to paper has still got its place, Marcus, as much as I hate to say it. But you can take a photo of it and then upload it.
I'll just close my ears for a little bit. That's fine.
I hope we're resonating with at least some people out there, because that's
I still like paper. I still like reading paper books. Don't worry, I'm just.
There you go. No Kindle there. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks.
So look, that's great, guys, and I think a lot of people need, obviously understand now the need to sort of look at those 3 A's and so on. I think you've alluded to a couple of practical tools and tips, and I think we should probably, and I suspect most of the people who are on the call are going, yes, let's get to the practical tools and tips, because everybody wants those. Before we do that, though, I just remind people who are on the call, who are the participants, if you do have any questions, do pop them into the Q&A, and anything that comes up, and if we have time, we'll go through them either at the time that you ask or at the end, but do that now. So practical tools and tips. You mentioned the Eisenhower matrix, so perhaps you want to tell us about that. And by the way, I think it's worth, before you go in, having seen some of these tools and tips that you're actually talking about, one of the things that I was very impressed about, and the reason why you called these specific things out, because there are so many tools and tips out there, lots of books and lots of methods and all that sort of stuff, just was that you pick some of these tools and tips that are very much backed and based in neuroscience, and the evidence behind how these things work is, more than just some guy who decided to come up with this theory. So I thought that that was really impressive. But let's hop into the first tip.
Yeah, and I mean that just to add on to about the 3 A's. I mean that's looking at over 1,200 studies that they've come across, those foundations and built those foundations. Everything we are talking about is backed by science and by those by research and peer reviews as well. Like we want to be able to provide, information and content that is certainly scientifically relevant there. And for any, even if anyone wanted any references and some more additional information, please reach out. We're more than happy to share where we get our content from. But the Eisenhower matrix is I mean, I'm sure a majority of people out there have heard of Stephen Covey and how he's the 7 habits of highly effective people, which I do love. Should I mention that even if you haven't and you haven't had time to read the book, he's got an awesome 7-minute YouTube clip that really starts and he animates the whole section about his 7 habits, and I think that was very clever because it only took about 8 minutes to watch. So
if you're time poor, no pun intended, absolutely, there you go. There's the short version.
And I think we get fixated on again what this is a very great time management tool, but as what Marcus said, we want to relate this all to mental health today. We understand that, again, as I know there's a couple of practice managers out there I'm sure we're talking about to today, but we want to be able to make sure that ourselves are protected. And one of the ways we have been taught about the Eisenhower matrix is we really want to be focusing on the decide section. So the not urgent, but really important. And what we also incorporate all of our clients to do it, especially, when they come to us with time management techniques or relationship issues or anxiety because the work overload is too much and then they're having some work relationship breakdowns, is let's look at you first. And this is in the section of decide. So schedule a time and do it. And Stephen Covey and along with some other researchers always said, if you can master this section, if you can have something that doesn't move or alter during the week, that is apart from the extenuating circumstances, and you're able to do that and know that is a set consistent time every day, that you are more likely, because of your optimal wellbeing or because of your area of play. And this could be read a book, catch up with a friend, watch a certain movie, exercise,
meditate, whatever.
Meditate, bake, anything that resonates to you at any time that resonates to you, as long as you are doing it every day, that this is connected with better time management. So it's about putting you first, because it's the old saying is that, are we living to work or are we working to live? Which one are we doing? And sometimes I think we do need to take stock of that, because we can be so automatic. And during this time, I suppose in 2020, as we were talking at the start, Marcus, we need to reevaluate ourselves now into moving back into the office. I know with WA, it was a little bit different, but more on the East Coast, we're getting very staggered for quite a long time. And we want to be able to keep on putting ourselves first, because when we talk to our employees, one of the thin slices of joy last year was a couple more boundaries, and also taking that commute out to work allowed them to do some things that they really enjoyed and valued. Make sure you are still doing that as we move back into, dare I say, the new norm. And once all these rollouts have been put in, we're going to come back to a far more normal way of life. Make sure that you still put you first and don't go back into those old habits. And we'll go on to the good old Pomodoro technique.
Is that his name? What's the story?
No. Well, I did some research on this because I wasn't sure what this is all about. And apparently the Italian bloke that actually came up with this, he's a business consultant like Stephen Covey. And he apparently uses a tomato, which is what Pomodoro is Italian for tomato. And he had a timer that actually looks like a tomato, and so he just called it the Pomodoro technique. So there you go. Okay. So I was curious as well.
Yeah, I'm like, what is this Pomodoro? I mean, I knew what it meant, but I was like, where'd that come from?
Fred, well, dare I say, I found this in my master's when I used to also do a lot of lecturing and everything. And when I actually use a Pomodoro technique as well, Marcus, was when I had to correct so many assignments. And I realized that my attention span wasn't long enough. And so I did in short, sharp bursts. And I think that's what is so powerful about this. And it's also about the simplicity of that. It encourages the individuals to work with the time they have rather than against the clock all the time. So the simple trick is from Francesco himself, like he gets a 4 Pomodoros, or you can get an egg timer, or get any timers, like, you know, but I don't know, a tomato can be a bit of fun to have in the office, and break down the project in 25-minute bursts. And then between each of the 25 minutes, you have a 5-minute break, and that's to do whatever you want. So it can be an area where you have to be quite disciplined. You know, if you can, you know, you turn your phone off. If you can't, it even says that that's okay. You know, you can pick up the phone and you can take that 5-minute break, but then you have to start the clock again, essentially. But we really want to be able to resist majority of those temptations and the interruptions that we do get with the pings of the emails, all the phone calls, and to be able to create that attention for, you know, those short bursts of time. And then we have the 5 minutes to be able to walk around, to be able to go and get a coffee, go to the bathroom, or quickly have a chat with your colleague, and then get back into it. So it's a great way to train the brain in that way, and bring your attention back to the task at hand. So have a go of it. It's that easy. Like what we are all about, some solution focused strategies that are really simple, and the last thing you want to do is bombard individuals. And it's literally as easy as it sounds.
It is, and I think that you make a good point, and on the back of what Marcus said before about these like strategies that we're giving you today, not only are they heavily backed by research, and there's efficacy there, but we're also, the other goal is we wanted them to be simple, right? You know,
absolutely.
Because, I mean, what we're talking about, and everyone's busy, and so we want user-friendly strategies, which again is, I guess, the next one that
well, that's sorry. And I finished that off. Sorry, Freddie.
Nat needs to keep talking. That's why.
It's just, I think that what I just want to add to that is that, you know, research shows that the procrastination has little to do with laziness or self-control. It's that rather we put things off because we want to avoid the negative feelings that it can start to come. So that fixed mindset that can start to, like, how am I going to start this task? What if I can't do it? Oh my God, this is so overwhelming. And so the Pomodoro techniques is it helps you to break down those tasks, to then gain that sense, to even the fact that you're starting it, and gain that sense of achievement. And once we can gain that sense of achievement, and we have those more positive thinking patterns, we're more likely to complete that task. So it does play on that psychological phenomenon there too.
Oh, we love this. I'm obsessed with this one. Nat sort of reintroduced me to this when we were preparing this webinar not long ago, and habit stacking. And I love the name too. And it, as it says, creates a stronger neural pathway. So I guess the important key aspect here is that with my sciencey mind, that we're all, obviously the brain's made up of a lot of neural pathways, and they all have certain fantastic things that they're responsible for. They're connected, entwined, and the brain, as we know, it finds a path, like the path of least resistance, and once that's sort of reinforced, or it gets reinforced over time to operate in the most, you know, sort of effective and efficient manner. I sort of see it like a river that flows down a path, the path of least resistance. That's sort of because I'm quite visual, that's what I see the brain like. And so, you know, I guess, so to put that into this context, when we do things like when we wake up in the morning, we have habits that we're not even aware of. You know, we might wake up, we might turn our alarm off on our phone, we might get up and go to the bathroom, we might brush our teeth, whatever it is for you. We've already got these habits that have formed, and I guess this concept talks about clustering and stacking those habits, which creates a greater probability of remembering them and actually achieving and associating them to other tasks. And the clear, I mean, the essential goal here, or the outcome here, is consistency. So what that leads to is greater consistency, which leads to being effective, efficient, and obviously getting stuff done in a timely manner, which is what we're talking about today. And then back to mental health, how you feel about yourself. So Yeah, I love this. And as this slide says, so the sort of the dialogue that goes on here is, you know, after and I'm using Nat's example because we've talked a lot about it. After I go to the gym, I will come home and make the beds. So you kind of use the current habit that you've already got. She's been going to the gym for a long time, but making the bed was something that was not in the repertoire. So she wanted to create a new habit of doing that when she got home. And they just stack and form on top of each other. And eventually you get this really beautiful pathway or river, like to connect it back to what I was saying before. And that becomes your new norm, the way that you do things. And it becomes also subconscious, meaning that you're not consciously having to be aware of doing these things. You're waking up and it's an automatic response, which means, guess what? Less time, less energy, less, you know, concentration, all that can be used to do something else that adds value to your life. So this one is super duper easy. And it's also really great and effective when you stack onto habits that you've already got. So foundation habits, I think they call it, or that Cleary, what's his name? James Clear calls it. And that's where it becomes really effective if you use the ones you've got. So you're not reinventing the wheel, and you stack on.
And it's really, it's actually been shown, the research shown that it's really powerful in the morning to use, because normally we've got a lot of tasks to do in the morning in a set amount of time. And we feel like we're working against the clock and constantly continually having to remember it rather than creating it. And, you know, obviously this doesn't happen, you know, the first day. You know, habits can take a while to form depending upon the person. There's no set day or amount of time, should I say, about habit formation. But it's certainly amazing that, especially for busy individuals who are trying to get out the door, to rather than say, have I done everything, to have it in this sequential order, because the brain is starting, you've trained the brain to think like that. And that just takes out a lot of less stress. And as we know, if we're not displaying that stress so much in the morning, when we get to work with it with a bit of a clearer mind, so and that's really important to start the day off. So habit stacking is another really easy one to start, and it's also a great one at night, so you can set yourself up at night for the next day as well. So a great way of time management, very easy, very, very scientifically backed too.
Before I go to bed, I will put my gym clothes on the chair, so that sort of thing. And again, linking it back, as we've done for the majority of today, is back to mental health. You know, it's a sense of achievement. It's building that sense of, you know, that we're adding value, that we're achieving. And I know Nat talks a lot about with some of her, you know, depressed clientele that she sees privately, and with clients with depression, it works really well because it can be done by, you know, after I get up, I'm going to brush my hair. You know, tasks. It can be, it's small, and we can all do it. So love this. Like we could bang on about it all day. But
well, look, I think I mean that's really interesting, because when I hear you talk about that, the thing that sort of comes to mind for me is this, you know, this habit stacking thing sounds like it's trying to create more and more routines that give you more the autopilot, so you don't have to think too much about it.
Correct.
And actually it reminds me of this story that I heard about Steve Jobs, who basically, you know, he's famous for his black turtleneck, and he has a whole string of black turtlenecks. That's all he ever wears. And he, as a very busy CEO, when he was the CEO of Apple, used to do this largely so that he didn't have to think or decide too many things. So this concept of decision fatigue, where you've got so many decisions you've got to make during the day, and look, all of us are very busy and we've got to make lots of decisions for all sorts of different things. Trying to minimize the decision fatigue by basically just reducing down the number of options is actually not a terrible thing either. And I think that's because the having to choose actually takes up time. You know, you've got to churn up lots of time and thought and brain power to actually go, should I? Whereas if I've just got a uniform, I'm going, I don't have to think about it. I'm out. You know, like that's. So I thought that's quite quite an interesting.
Right, but that's exactly it as well. Like the habit stacking creates that, because you go, should I do this task or this task first in the morning, and that alone takes the time. Whereas if I've already created a habit where this is just sequential and I'll just automatically do it, it's all about decision fatigue as well. And yeah, I think Mark Zuckerberg does the same thing as well. They always have the same.
I heard that about Mark Zuckerberg too, but he's not exactly the flavour of the month at the moment. So
he's not.
Shouldn't say that.
At our next seminar, Marcus, if you see the two of us coming in the same outfit, you'll know.
We decided to do it. It's very tempting.
The black turtleneck. I'll look out for it.
Yeah.
So look, I think those are three really excellent techniques. And clearly, there are lots of other techniques. Did you want to just talk a little bit about some of the other stuff that that maybe some of the participants on the call have actually heard of, and maybe talk a little bit about?
Absolutely, because again, we're all about creating that that level of optimal well-being, and the setting the work-life boundaries is probably. I mean, a lot of people would have heard a lot about that now. And boundaries about even just the times. Like if you are going to be working on a set amount of projects, or you're looking at your high priority tasks here, and you've split your days up into 4. And there's 4 high priorities in your day, you're going to have to stick to those boundaries to that day. And if it is as much as even setting a timer to then having that break, to then getting onto the task at hand for the next round, or setting a timer to have 5 minutes of, okay, this is what I'm going to do tomorrow when I'm working on that high priority task, and then pushing it aside to set it. You've got to be disciplined there. So that's a very important aspect of being able to create good time management and feeling that sense of achievement. The self-care, very obvious. Sleep is a hugely important component, where I've got plethora of research on how much sleep does affect memory formation, obviously affects energy, and affects mood. I know we talked about this last week, Marcus, and you're interested in the checklists and to-do lists. Maybe another pen there. There's a lot of apps, and but the checklist is great, because not only can you do this in your work life, but you also do this in your personal life as well. So it really is to develop every morning. And again, if this is just a set area of time that you take your me time, to write down every single thing today that you're wanting to achieve, and you go through it and highlight it or cross it off, and that creates a completion bias phenomenon.
What's it called again? The fancy word?
in your brain, which then just again gives you that sense of achievement. So that works on a plethora of individuals, especially in time management, but also just individuals who have got some diagnoses that they're really struggling to maintain or do anything in the day. Grouping tasks. I know that you're a bit of a fan of chunking, I hear, Marcus. So that can be that can be interesting there, and chunking your time.
My kids tell me that I'm actually a bit chunky, maybe I should get away, but that's different.
Oh gosh, and look, assertiveness. Don't feel to say, look, I'm feeling overwhelmed. Is there anyone else? What can I do about it? Because it's amazing. Especially if you're that personality that's a bit of a giver and thinks that you feel like all the burden, should I say, of the task fall on your shoulders. Be assertive. Stand up and say, look, I'm feeling really overwhelmed right now. Is there anyone else, or has anyone got any spare time to see what we can do to be able to take some of these loads off me? And that is going to then help with your time management too, because you won't get so flustered and stressed there. Got to take breaks. You have to take breaks in that mindset. It's really important to even go around, walk around the block, and it's amazing how much your productivity can go when you when you've got some endorphins running.
Fresh eyes. It's that whole
creativity. It can really start to get a bit of a sensory difference. It doesn't have to be a huge amount of breaks, and we're all probably guilty of eating our lunch in front of our computer screens as well. Saying no socially and professionally, your limits, be aware of your limits. So that's part of the A. And if you have to say no, don't feel like you're offending individuals. Just to even say no, not right now. Let's see if we can look at how we can incorporate that next week. Avoid the urge to multitask too much there. Some people are great at multitasking, but there is really no such thing as multitasking, because if someone comes in, knocks on your office, you're on the phone call and you're trying to write an email, none of it's getting done, because you're stopping the email, you're telling that other person to hold, and then you're getting that, you're getting the door, you're saying, what do I need here? Then, okay, then you've got to call the person to say, okay, now where were we? And then you've got to get back to the email. And it takes around, every time you get interrupted like that, or you try and multitask, it takes around 27 minutes to get back on task. It's actually a huge amount of time that can be wasted. So try and avoid that multitask there. We've even known employees, or we've told employees to even have a do not disturb sticker, at certain times on their door, so they can really start to focus and hone in.
We need doors here.
Yeah, and I think I've done schedule what between us.
Yeah, between us, because otherwise she just comes over and goes, hey, I need to get better with my saying no and my boundaries.
Absolutely.
Being assertive. I'll come back to you in 5 minutes. Yeah.
I can be blunt. And I think we've written schedule break times again. So
yeah. I mean, some places obviously have open plan offices, and the whole disruption can be quite quite high if people aren't sort of alert to the fact that people are trying to concentrate and so on. Then we talk about context switching a lot in the business. Interestingly, because as a technology company, we have a lot of engineers, they have their headphones on, and that when they've got their headphones on and coding, you don't disturb them, because exactly that, it takes them half an hour to get back on task and in.
And traffic lighting is a good one as well, Marcus. We literally have your red tag, and the red tag means do not disturb me. So it's an easy visual. People put it at the back of their chairs, so they just put it in there. And I think it's such an easy thing to go. If you turn around, like, oh no, they've got the red tag, they've got their red dot on. You just got to remember to take it off, or maybe leave it on. I don't know.
well, the other thing, when you started talking about that, was actually around phones. I find that I don't know about everybody else, but we have a plethora of messaging apps and notifications and all sorts of stuff that come through on our phones, and it's very easy to get distracted, sort of seeing that who's pinged me, or is this urgent, or any of that sort of stuff. But if you actually, there's a tool that I sometimes use I call it flight time, which is basically putting my phone on flight mode, which means you won't get any pinging at all generally. And that it's as if you're on the plane where you can't get disturbed, which is some of the best things that we miss out of not flying. But that can really help sort of reduce some of this disturbance. Look, I'm really conscious of time, and we've actually got a question from somebody. So we've actually yay! We like questions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put Gris on so that he can, or she. I'm not sure whether Gris is a male or female, but if you want to ask your question, Gris, do you want to unmute, or can you unmute? What have we got here? Oh, okay.
Just might need to type it.
Yeah, don't be shy, Gris. We don't bite.
Yeah, and if you're struggling with the tech and you can't speak for whatever reason, maybe just pop it into the Q&A chat, and we can read it out for you if it's easier. But hang on, let me see whether Freddie, I'm not sure whether you can actually unmute Gris. I can't. So anyway, we'll carry on whilst Gris is potentially sort of sorting out the technology. So look, I think just to wrap up all of that, because there was plenty of stuff there, and and we'll get into some questions if we've got a little bit of time. But do you want to talk a little bit about sort of what we should be hearing or sort of seeing, having heard all these different things? Like, you want to wrap it up?
Yeah. There was one thing I was thinking about before, which is not on the slide here, but that we read before we came on today, that I think it's important to remember that small changes will get you big results. So these are simplistic tools, and they are about making small little adjustments, but small adjustments doesn't mean small outcomes. It means actually some really significant changes to not only your personal life, your professional life, your career, your relationships, all of it. So don't sort of get lost in that mindset that small changes is not going to create big difference, because it does. And the outcome of good, obviously, just to take away and wrap up the hour that we've spent with you guys, the outcome of good time management benefits overall emotional well-being in both environments, professionally and personally. We know they're all connected, they cascade into one another. We've been banging on about it today, but it really is about your overall health and well-being.
And we do a lot of CBT work, but you know, we focus a lot on ACT, so it's very amalgamated within it. And ACT is all about being self-aware. We do so many things automatically, and that within itself is such a waste of time. So just taking the time to take stock and reflect is something that's so important, and guaranteeing you, although it might take a little bit of time to set that up, it's going to save you a lot of time. And it's not as just what Sash said, it's a very simple thing to do. Like, you know, journaling and reflecting upon the day. It's like a gratitude. It's
And for those of you that don't know, obviously you've probably heard of CBT, but ACT that Nat was referring to is acceptance and commitment therapy, which is another sort of model, another strain of
third
therapy.
wave
Third
CBT.
wave. So we sort of cross-pollinate with the both of them and find them really helpful. But just on that second point there, so using time management strategies to increase self-awareness will assist, this is following on with overall feelings of control and can reduce stress levels. So that's a really important thing to take out of today as well, that these things will help on a macro level. Time management will help on that level. Choose time management strategies that best fit you. And I know Marcus said it, we said it, we had a little bit of a giggle about our paper diaries, but again, what works for one may not work for another. Find what works for you, and you all know what works for you. You may not be consciously aware of what works for you, but take the time to sit, to reflect, and to connect in within yourselves to work out, well, what is that for me? And what, okay, Joe Blow over here might use the paper diary, but I actually prefer my calendar on my phone. That's okay. Again, being gentle and finding your own way to do it, because if you're up against doing something that's not in your isn't your best fit, guess what, it's
going to waste a lot more time.
We really hope that you found this useful. We found it useful.
Of course, these absolutely. Again, put it in the forefront of your mind.
So and please, if you're not able to ask us questions here for whatever reason,
reach out. We've got a handout coming, so that'll be sent around by Tamara.
So no, thanks for that content, guys. What I'm going to do is I'm going to see whether we've got maybe 5 minutes just to ask a couple of questions, and if anyone's got any questions, please feel free to plonk it into the Q&A. Gris, I'm not sure whether you've still sort of got that question that you wanted to ask, because your hand's still up, but I'm not sure whether you can actually speak. Happy to unmute?
Everyone should be able to unmute.
Yeah. Any questions from the floor? No. Well, look, I'll ask one quick question towards the end. I think, look, you're absolutely right about the things that the tools that you need to use in order to to be what's right for you. I might even quickly share with you how my time management stack, if anybody's interested. Obviously I do tend to use apps, and the calendar app is something that I'm very much a big user of. I basically schedule my life, on a 15-minute by 15-minute basis. It's pretty hectic. But I actually tied into a to-do list type of app that is more dynamic, called Trello, and I'm not sure if people have heard of it, but it's a Kanban board type of thing where it's more of a dynamic to-do list. So you actually are able to track everything you need to do, and then make sure that it's on track and completed and so on, in a slightly different way than just a typical to-do checklist, which I find really, really helpful. It reduces the load of having to keep everything in my head, which is really, really important, because obviously you don't want to miss stuff, but you don't want to sort of ignore it as well. One of my questions was actually just more around calendaring, and at the point where you've actually calendared in something like exercise, which is important, but in the urgent and important side of things, sometimes stuff that's more urgent kind of overrides stuff like going to the gym. Like, how do you guys manage something like that?
Then you find another time in there. Like if that's continually happening, then you might then need to schedule in that time. Like even if you can create that as a malleable time. At times, I understand that. Like we've got another guy who works and he does meditation 11 o'clock every single day, right? And everything else is surrounded, but things happen. That there is that urgency, and life happens. So whether or not, if that is continually happening, you might need to then determine, well, what might be another time to be able to create that. And that's happened to us as well, Marcus. Is that look, at this stage, my time has shifted for me time between 6 and 7 a.m. and that's what I need at that time, and then my time when I try and do it is between 4:30 to 5 p.m. To be able just to take that time out and to not take any phone calls between that time, because that's my kid time, because that's my time that I then kind of put my mum hat on and are able to get the dinner ready and everything. I just want to, and you know, the readers, and I've got 2 small ones, and just get them sorted just until at 5 o'clock. I might then still have meetings up to 7 p.m, 8 p.m. at night. So it's not always going to always work, but if it works more often than not, then keep it. But if you're finding that there's a lot of clashes, reflect and then see how you can then shift that around. So it is a malleable thing. It's just what we try and highlight is that you've really got to put that aside every day and make that conscious effort.
And can I jump in there, Marcus, quickly, if we've got a minute to add? If it is happening frequently as well, I would also add to what Nat said and say, assess your priorities. If your exercise keeps getting bumped because of life coming up, well, how important have you prioritized exercise in your, because you've got to prioritize with these lists. Yes. So is exercise of a high priority, or are you just saying it is? Like, connect in, you know, is it in, because obviously if it keeps getting shunted to the side, perhaps it may not be as high a priority as you're claiming it is.
And it probably also comes back to awareness as well. Like, you know, especially with that, part of the 3As and what we do a lot of work around is that it's important when you conduct a task that you then reflect upon how that made you feel. So if that task, after you do it, you know what, I feel that I've got more energy, I feel like I've got higher concentration, I feel like I'm a better person, and I'm better to be in the office with, then you keep it. so again, it's, you know,
we've given you a long answer there, but you know, we've heard it all.
I guess I'm preserving exercise in my diary.
Yeah.
So, well, look, guys, I think we've come to time. So thank you so much for all that content. That was great. For those who either came in a bit late or want just the materials, we'll definitely send you out the deck and any handouts associated with it. I did have Nat and Sasha's sort of details on the screen, but no doubt they'll be very happy to talk to anybody who's interested. Yeah. And thank you so much for taking the time, guys, and all the participants. Thank you again for joining our webinar series, and no doubt we'll be seeing you at the next one. So thanks again, and be safe.
Take care, guys.
Everybody. Bye.
See you. Bye.